I'm going to read the first little part of the story. Marie started to lose it just before Labor Day. For 2 years we've been renting a tiny bungalow in a cluster of tiny bungalows in the canyon underneath the Shakespeare Bridge, a place so small that it made our kitten, Gerald, feverish with the desire to escape. One day as we were bustling in with grocery bags, he gave a cry of freedom and bolted between our legs. I set down my load and made a show of rooting through the bushes for him for Marie's sake, but I knew he was gone to try his luck with the coyotes. In 8 months of life he had grown into a disconsolate lurker, uncommonly large and with claws like an eagle, and seemed to find his only brief joy in slashing at our hands. So that was the last we saw of Gerald. But I loved the place. It was bright and full of air. Marie had cut and sewn thin white curtains with lemons printed on them. We could open the window in the back bedroom to take a lemon off of the tree. The only kind of music she liked was this tinny big band swing, and in the evenings it would be blaring in the kitchen. The sink was always full of dishes, but we kept the counters clean. I had a job with a roofing company that serviced the mansions of Los Feliz and Silver Lake, fitting red clay tiles into place, and I was always looking to the other backyards and seeing things. Shocking number of naked women. No ordinary naked women either. Women possessing the kind of beauty that only money can buy. Skin smooth as cream, perfectly tapered noses. The kind of women who fan themselves with hundreds. First couple of times I just caught a glimpse, a bright white slab of female statuary, and ducked away. But gradually I grew more comfortable with it, and I wouldn't be shy about staring. They saw me too, and they didn't mind. They were on display. Quite often they smiled at me, one of those torturous smiles that's not quite an invitation. You should see where I live now. A grimy cube on the 4th floor of a hotel in Pico Union. I had to saw my sofa in half to get it inside. I sleep on a child-sized bed because of a bulky radiator that doesn't function but can't be removed because it's in the historic register. Every evening I sit on half of the sofa and lean out the open window. Below me are the streets of old LA, families on their evening strolls with grandpa limping behind, sometimes a police chopper's spotlight racing along, 3 men pushing a broken down Pontiac, 1,000 lighted apartment windows in which depressing one-act plays are being performed, men eating alone or kids dumbstruck by the TV. So forgive me if I look back on the bungalow with a kind of euphoria. Marie was making good money as a house cleaner, doing 3 or 4 houses a day at one point, a prosperity we knew had to do with her being white. I can't tell you how many people called up saying, "Can Marie come on Friday? We're having a party and it's helpful to have someone you can just talk to." And I was surviving too, a lone white man on the roofs of the rich. When a client wanted something, they came straight to me, even though they knew Manolo was the boss. I can't say I felt good about any of that, but I can't say I minded it terribly either. It kept us in the black. As I say, things went wrong in early September. I came home around 8, just as dusk was falling, to the bungalow lit up in its dependable, optimistic way. Arriving there, I always felt like a lone traveler coming upon an inn after miles of fog. Inside, Marie had disassembled the television remote and was heating it in a saucepan. I knew instantly that something was very wrong, but just as instantly I denied that fact. Maybe this was some kind of joke. Never mind that Marie didn't make jokes. She appreciated them, laughed at them, but destruction of property was not her idea of a good time. In my gut, I knew this was bad. "Smells good," I said, hoping she'd be ready with a quip and the whole brilliant prank would be revealed. She ignored me and stirred the puddle of plastic with a whisk. On the drive home, I just kept thinking, boy, I hope Marie's cooking electronics tonight. She looked at me blankly and then turned the gas flame up. "Seriously," I said, "what the hell are you doing?" "I couldn't get my channel," she said. "What channel?" "On the TV." Often I forgot for weeks at a time that we even owned a television. It sat in dusty dejection on a little plywood stand in the corner of the room, piled over with mail and rent receipts. "You mean that TV? Sweetheart, it's not even plugged in." Oh my God, you're right. Of course you're right. I'm an idiot." I reached past her and flicked the burner off, then carried the saucepan down the winding path that joined the bungalows and went behind the laundry outbuilding. There I let the ruined remote slide into the dumpster. When I came back in, Marie was opening the windows and turning on a fan to clear the place of the lingering smell of singed circuitry. I'm an idiot, she said again. Oh no, I said, putting my arms around her waist, kissing her neck, smelling on her skin the scouring chemicals she used at work. You're probably tired. Have a seat and I'll make some spaghetti. Perhaps it was that line that disturbed me more than anything. I'm an idiot. I'd never heard her disparage herself. She had a confidence without arrogance that was impressive to behold. Truthfully, she was never really beautiful. She had plain features and a body that seemed like an averaging of what a human body could be, everything in perfect, unspectacular proportion. But each movement and thought and word she had was enlivened by the inexhaustible font of self-belief running inside her. Couldn't help but want to drink from it, to borrow some of that fearlessness. We were driving through Oregon once and stopped at a bridge where a man was selling strawberries from the bed of his pickup. While I counted out enough change to buy a carton, Marie peered over the edge. Below was a crevasse of black rock and a swirling river. How far down is it? She asked the man. About 45 feet. Water's high right now. It looked like 3 miles to me. Marie lifted her dress over her head and gave it to me. Then she hopped the rail. I was rude to the spot, holding a box of strawberries, watching her fall like a spear, falling for hours, arms at her side, toes pointed, finally stabbing the water and going under. The surface was hardly disturbed. Then she came back up and we could hear her screaming over the roar of the water. I thought she'd broken her back. Sweet Jesus, the fruit seller said, you can't jump off of it. But then I heard her cries for what they really were, joy. She swam around down there for a while, letting the current take her from rock to rock. There were giant homicidal rocks in that river, before she got out. It took her 10 minutes to scramble back up to the bridge, soaking wet in her shoes and underwear. I touched the bottom, she announced, like it was a good thing. So that's the kind of person she was. We made love that night, which I only mentioned because it was the last time. We were good at it, good at each other. She had the fluidity of a natural athlete, even though she was hopeless at sports. I took her to the park one afternoon and threw her a football, lofted it from 10 feet away, and it hit her right on the nose, stunning the tears from her eyes. I waited another 6 months, and then tried flicking a frisbee at her. It went through her hands and struck her throat. She made a series of alarming coughing noises and ran inside the house. But you should have watched her with a mop. Watched her skate down the 50-foot waxed hallway of a mansion in her stocking feet when no one else was around. She was an artist. And in bed it was the same. She could move in ways no one else knew, employ muscles she seemed to have invented. At first she was too good for me. One gyration and I was done for her. But I figured her out. Over time I took her apart and fit her back together again. That incident with the remote control bothered me for a few weeks. I didn't mention it and neither did she. Instead I'd lie awake and listen to her breathe at night. She was sleeping a lot, 11, 12 hours, going to bed early, sometimes with the sun still clinging to the horizon so that she could be up in time for work. I was busy with a big job in the Los Feliz Hills. The house was a 1920s Spanish colonial that had grown over the years into a rambling freak show of jacuzzis and putting greens and glass atriums. A French movie star had bought it and wanted to move in by October 1st. The roof was a mess of shattered tiles and bird droppings, and the neighbor lady didn't seem to own any clothes. Every day she was out there flat on her back with a sun mirror underlighting her face and her breasts standing at attention, nipples pointing magnetic north. It was slow going. At home in the evenings, Marie was quiet. I was arriving home before her most days, and when she did return, she would pick at the food I'd made, which in her defense was never especially good, and pretty soon wander off to bed. I'd stay up reading something or filling out the day's crossword. One night a coyote wandered past our sliding glass door. I chased him off and watched him lope up the street, pausing to sniff at the trash cans out on the curb for pickup day. Then, instead of going back in, I too continued along the street. Ours was a well-off neighborhood of stucco houses and prim yards, presided over by the Shakespeare Bridge with its pointed little sentry boxes. It was above our station, really. Most of the houses were single-family, sizable places. Asphalt shingles, not clay. Occupied by minor TV actors and successful dentists. The rent on the bungalow was at the extreme upper limit of what we could afford. I felt like an interloper there, but a happy one, a lotto winner. The street wound up out of the shallow canyon and rejoined the city. I walked along Tracy, past the high school, along rows of neat houses with parched little lawns, kept semi-green through the long summer by sprinklers. These were LA's ancient suburbs, decades ago usurped by the thousands of housing tracts that had sprung up in the desert, Now out there, a roofer could make a buck. Those places were just stapled together. You could slap a roof on them in an afternoon, do 15 a week, charge whatever you want. I guess if I had been smarter, that was what I would have done. At Hyperion Avenue, waiting for the light to change, I started to worry about Marie at home by herself. It suddenly seemed plausible that she might die, just quietly expire on the sofa. I was afraid for her, something she had long ago trained me against. But I didn't want to go back. That was the first I can remember of the bungalow losing its mystique. There was a time when I would have paid admission to watch Marie sleep. Now I felt the horrible undermining sensation of home losing its power of asylum. I preferred to stand on the corner of Tracy and Hyperion, breathing exhaust from the 100 cars waiting in a red light, than lie down next to the woman I loved with a nighttime breeze moving the curtains she had sewn. I turned around. I had come a fair distance, so it was late when I got back, and Marie was there just as I'd left her. I don't know what I hoped, that she'd be up and vacuuming, dancing to Count Basie. No, she was just deep in a weird slumber. After Marie jumped off the bridge, she did not let my fury bother her. "You scared the shit out of me," I told her. Nothing. Later I tried again. We could have been arrested, you know. That kind of logic didn't work on Marie. We'd driven for half an hour in silence when she began to laugh, torrents of laughter. She kept trying to tell me something but couldn't get it out, shaking and doubled over in her seat so that all I could see was the curve of her back, the wet dress stuck to her skin. I was annoyed. Eventually she calmed down enough to say, "Now we're even." I thought about that for a while, and then I laughed, just a little. Marie and I met because I fell off of a roof into a pool beside which she was sunning herself. It was not a swimming pool, but a deep, murky koi pond full of tangling reeds and huge, evil-looking fish. Before I fell, I had seen her down there on the tiled patio, lying on her stomach with the strings of her bikini top untied. She was blonde and looked like an heiress. It never occurred to me that she was the housekeeper. When I fell in, I was wearing a 40-pound utility belt and work boots that sought the bottom like lead bricks. She saved me. I hadn't been under more than a second, and she was down there with me, this creature from another world, wearing nothing but her bikini bottoms, hauling me toward the surface with incredible strength. I held the edge of the pool while she swam down and yanked the boots from my feet and unbuckled my belt, letting it slide away. Thus freed, I pulled myself out and lay stunned on the hot tiles. She went inside and changed her clothes, and when she came back, she stood over me wearing a towel in her hair like some kind of pharaonic headdress, and surveyed the wreckage of the pond. The lily pads were thrashed, and a couple of the giant speckled fish were bobbing belly up. "Thanks," I said finally. She dropped a fresh towel folded and smelling of daisies onto my chest. "Hadn't you better finish the roof?" The roof. I lay there for a few more minutes, then went to my truck and got my spare tools. Santa Anas were blowing, and after a few minutes back on top, my clothes were dry and smelled awful. Below in the patio, Marie mopped away the wet print of my body and used a long hook to straighten out the lily pads. She fished out my utility belt and my boots and put them in the back of the truck. I worked into the night, finishing the job at 8:45. I should have packed everything up, come back tomorrow. I didn't get paid after 6, but her command had overridden all that. When I finally did carry everything down to the truck, she was sitting in the cab with the windows rolled down and the radio playing. "Do you always leave the key in it?" "Usually." "And do you fall often?" "First time." I put everything away in the bed and got in. The moment I touched the steering wheel, I began to shake. Marie had to drive me home. At the time, I shared a one-bedroom on Fountain with an out-of-work tailor named Fred, who paid a third of the rent, slept on a futon in the living room, and watched gangster movies continually with the sound all the way up. Marie found the building without any directions, parallel parked the truck expertly, and helped me up the stairs. She guided me into my bedroom, ignoring Fred, and stripped off my rancid work clothes. I sat on the edge of the bed in my underwear while she ran a bath. I was already desperately in love with her by the time she eased me down into the hot water. I was recovered by then and didn't need the help, but took it anyway. And then got down on her hands and knees to scrub the grout of the bathroom tiles with Fred's toothbrush. A month later, we moved into the bungalow. There were a handful of blissful weeks during which I could not believe my luck. I wandered around like a blind man whose sight has providentially returned. Of course, Marie was never perfect. She didn't understand sarcasm, and she had the strong, ugly hands of a laborer. But I wasn't perfect either. And she loved me, fiercely and openly. When my back was aching and immobile from unloading 4 tons of shingles, she would kiss the needle of pain just above my tailbone and make me lie face down on the sofa while she cleaned the clay dust from my fingernails. Let's see you do that for someone you don't love. Thank you.